Hi, everybody. This is John O'Reilly with O'Reilly Wealth Advisors, and welcome to our presentation on the what we call the retirement plan card game. And this is a cool little card game that we do in person with 401k plan sponsors, whether they're current clients or not. It's just a great way to understand and talk about 401k plans, whether again we're consulting with clients that have a plan. We always go back to the card game because it's just such a nice way to talk about the players in the game, or the players in the 401k plan, the providers, who they are, and things like that, to show how they all interrelate. So the background behind this, of course, is that 401k plans are complex. They're very difficult to understand. They are part of what's called ERISA. That was legislation back from 1974. So complex that it spawned a lot of attorney specialists, and has had many fine-tuning legislative events over the year that have changed the law. And despite all that, lawsuits have been accelerating. Overseers of plans need to have some understanding, and we found that this retirement plan card game is a fun, easy to digest visual way to better understand how 401k plans work. And if I was sitting in front of you right now, I would say, hey, congratulations. You have the ABC company retirement plan. And this is a good thing that you've decided to put in place for your employees. You're taking care of them, giving them a mechanism to save for retirement. It's a nice benefit and a good job. However, no good deed goes unpunished, and 401k plans come with some things that we don't like. They come with risk. There's qualification risk. That's if certain things were done incorrectly, the entire plan could suddenly become taxable. There's DOL IRS audits that occur on a somewhat regular basis, but as long as you have all your T's crossed and I's dotted, that's not going to be a big deal. You'll get through it okay. It'll just be another task that you have to deal with. There could be litigation. Again, that's very rare, but it can happen. A disgruntled employee could come back and try to sue you about the 401k plan. And there's also liability. There's liability in the plan. And so in the forms of liability, one is fee liability. Your fees must be reasonable. And I would argue that you'd be better off not just going for reasonable, but maybe even going for competitive. And you want your investment fund lineup to match up to current best practices. There's also fiduciary liability, kind of the overall liability that you have as the plan fiduciary overseeing the plan. And because you are a fiduciary, you are in the ring of fire, is what we call all this risk and liability that's surrounding you. So you have to deal with that ring of fire. So no matter what size plan you have, there's four providers you have to have. Two of those are administration and custodian. The administration, what that is the people that put together the original plan documents. They do the testing to see if the plan is top heavy at the end of the year. And they do things like submitting the form 5500, actually preparing it. You have to sign it. And that's the kind of the tax return on the plan every year. It's called the form 5500. The custodian, that's simply where the money is kept. That's where the transactions occur. That's kind of like the bank. And these are colored in black for purpose. These areas typically aren't the areas where you're going to see lawsuits or see major problems. And so that's why they're colored black. The next two, which are colored more of a green color, and that's because this is where some issues come up, which I'll get into more in a moment. The record keeper, which a lot of people don't realize that they are called record keepers. That's essentially where the plan is located. So for example, if you have Principal or Vanguard or Transamerica, and when you sign in on the internet to go look at your account, or if you're the plan sponsor looking at the plan and you see Principal or Transamerica, et cetera, that's the record keeper. They're basically sort of a portal to the plan. They keep all the separate accounts for all the individuals. They provide the interface for people to log in, look at their accounts. They provide the paper statements every quarter or month. And then you have the mutual funds there on the right. So the mutual funds, they come from different sources. They could, come from a variety of different companies. And so now there's the next person I'm showing here, entity, is the registered rep or broker. A lot of small plans have a registered rep or broker. They are a non-fiduciary. They are not able to take a fiduciary level responsibility because they accept commissions. That means they have conflicts because they have record keeping or mutual funds paying them commissions. And so the reason why these are all the same color is a lot of the problems occur right here in small plans that are of this style, which is the vast majority of them. And there is money that is being exchanged under the table, so to speak. It's called revenue sharing. They've attempted in recent times to try to force more disclosure of that. The success of that has been partial. We do know more now about the revenue sharing, but sometimes it can still be hidden, and it takes a lot of time and effort to review those and understand what's going on. And if you're a fiduciary, you don't want to have those kinds of opaque things going on inside the plan that you are carrying the liability for. So that's why we have these guys right together here, all in the same color. So that's the registered rep broker. And at this point, you may have noticed too that down here, I changed this card from what it was. Let me go back here. You may have noticed that it was the ABC company retirement plan. And now we changed it to the ABC company plan sponsor. And that's because it's an individual that's taking the liability, or individuals with a plural. And so you need to realize that this is a personal liability that you're taking on by overseeing the plan. All right. So how could, and by the way, this is my thing here. I call this the lonely fiduciary, because you're all alone in this ring of fire. You're all by yourself as the plan fiduciary with no other fiduciaries helping you at the moment. We're going to show you how you can bring some company in there with you to help you share that liability. And one way you can do that is by, instead of having a registered rep or broker, have a registered investment advisor. So the registered investment advisor, unlike the broker, can take full responsibility for selecting the fund lineup and take on the liability for that. And that reduces the liability on your shoulders as the plan sponsor. And that's why we've put the registered investment advisor down here in the middle of the ring of fire with you, because they take on some fiduciary liability. The registered rep broker cannot take on liability. Now, sometimes they talk the game so well, they use the fiduciary word a lot, and you may think you have an RIA. The only way to know for sure, well, there was really two ways. One way is you have to look at their service agreement in detail and see if it says that they're actually taking on the responsibility. It's referred to as ERISA Section 338. Another thing you could ask them to do is to write a letter saying that they are going to take full responsibility under ERISA Section 338 for the fund lineup. And if they're willing to put a letter like that together on their letterhead and sign it with an officer of the company, well, then, yeah, they are taking the RIA responsibility. So that's a registered investment advisor. So one upgrade you can make to your plan right away, if you have your own little standalone plan, is to add an RIA and ask them to help you improve the health of your plan overall. But just by hiring the RIA, that's a very smart decision to drop some liability off your shoulders and bring in somebody that is on your side, that's inside that ring of fire with you, so you're not alone anymore. Now, while we're on the topic of advisors, and what a broker will do is to try to approve their image. They'll go get an RIA license. So now they become duly registered, but you don't know what hat they have on at any one particular moment in time when you're talking to them. And if they're on your plan, unless you review their service agreement, like we mentioned a moment ago, or ask them to write a letter, you don't know if they're taking on ERISA 338, which means that they take on the investment liability and take total responsibility for the investment fund lineup. By the way, when you hire a registered investment advisor to take on that investment portion, they take on that full liability and they do all the work for you. So you're no longer having to be involved with decisions about adding or subtracting funds. You delegated it. You delegate. That's what a good fiduciary does, is they realize, you know what, I'm not an expert in investment fund lineups and fees and fund fees and things like that. So I'm going to find an expert that's going to take on that liability, and I'm going to delegate that to the experts. That's just a really smart fiduciary move to do, is to surround yourself with fiduciaries that are experts in particular areas. We're going to tell you how to do more of that in a moment. So moving forward here. So this would be kind of the ideal plan set up for a standalone plan, which is what most plans are, meaning that, you know, a company has its own plan. You're not sharing it with other people, other companies. So it's called a standalone plan. Since almost all plans are standalone, we don't normally use that term standalone, but I say that because in a moment, I'm going to be talking about aggregation programs that are not standalone plans. So that's why I add this word standalone here. I also want to point out that if you do hire a registered investment advisor, one of the things that they'll probably help you with is to look at your record keeper platform. You want to have a platform that's transparent and open architecture, and get rid of those revenue sharing issues. And so a good RIA who is expert in this area will assist you with doing that, as opposed to only taking care of the investment fund lineup. All right, let's move forward with aggregation plans. So the Secure Act was just passed in December 20th of 2019, and they introduced a new term called a PEP, or a pooled employer plan. This is the idea of bringing together a lot of businesses and a lot of assets. Now, the thing is that this already existed. The new legislation just makes it a little bit easier, gives you a little bit more benefit. But if you already had an aggregation program like what we offer, you're already 98% there. The Secure Act just gives you the extra 2%, which is wonderful. But we like it too, because it gave a little bit more, transparency, or it brought up this topic as something that people should be paying attention to. So the multiple employer plan or aggregation program that we bring forward to the community has tens of thousands of businesses and 1.7 billion of assets. And when you bring that to the marketplace, that's the way the financial services world works, is the more assets you have, the better treatment you get. And so you get great prices when you bring this gigantic aggregated plan to the marketplace. And then they also add in more service because they love that you brought in the 1.7 billion assets. Plus, they want to make sure that those assets are handled properly. So because there's all these little companies in there, they want to make sure that everything's being taken care of properly. So they add in like an extra staff member, which is referred to as an administrative fiduciary. So this helper handles the day-to-day minutia for you. So if you're a small business that doesn't have an HR staff, or you do have an HR staff, the HR staff has to spend a fair amount of time added up over across the year dealing with day-to-day minutia, people coming and going and making changes and things happening with their 401k accounts. And it's kind of a pain to deal with. It's a kind of aggregation. An aggravation. You want to focus on, as HR, you want to focus on having the teams work together better, focusing on hiring better people, focusing on helping people perform at a higher level and things like that. And you don't want to have to deal with the day-to-day minutia of the 401k plan. So this makes the plan very easy to oversee, and it also reduces liability as low as possible, because they're not only taking care of the day-to-day minutia, they're taking on the liability for the day-to-day minutia. And that's a very key point. So after all that minutia is out of the way, the plan sponsor is left with really three things. One is they still have responsibility to oversee the plan. They're still in the middle of that ring of fire, but they have another person that's joined them, which I'll show you in a second. And they have to do the payroll upload. Obviously, the money has to get from the payroll and into the individual accounts of each employee. And then every year they have to do an annual census update. So now you have this ERISA Section 316 administrative fiduciary in the ring of fire with you. So now your lonely fiduciary world is no longer lonely. Now you got two buddies in there. You got an RIA and you got an ERISA 316 administrative fiduciary. The RIA, by the way, is ERISA 338. We don't show the numbers in there. But now you've got two sections of ERISA where you have an expert that's handling those sections for you. You still have responsibility because you're overseeing the plan, but you've got two expert fiduciaries that are in there with you. And now you've got a whole team of fiduciaries to make sure your plan is as good as it can be. And this is an ideal plan for business owners and executives because not only do they take on the fiduciary liability, they can take on the time it takes to do that. The RIA takes on the time to manage those investments for you, so you don't have to do it. And the ERISA 316 administrative fiduciary takes care of a long list of minutia and the liability for it, so you don't have to do it. So that lowers your liability and reduces the distractions so you can focus on your core business and not being a 401k manager. Also, I want to point out that when you have an aggregation plan, it makes sense to have a record keeper that is an expert in aggregation plans that has a lot of experience with it. And we bring Transamerica to the table. By the way, the ERISA 316 administrative fiduciary is TAG Resources out of Knoxville, Tennessee. And then we use an RIA, Two West Advisors out of Kansas City. Now, what you just noticed right there, see that admin person that's up here, this provider? Well, the ERISA 316 takes on the admin part that's there. So that's one less provider to keep track of as well. And so that's what you look like when you're fully integrated into an aggregation program. And as I like to tell people, if I suddenly sold my my advisory business tomorrow because corporate America was hiring me into some big time corporate job, and they said, "Oh, by the way, O'Reilly, we also want you to take on overseeing the 401k plan," I would go to an advisor like myself, and I would say, "Could you please benchmark my plan for me?" And when you benchmark it, include a comparison to a aggregation program as well. And if it came out the way I know it would, I would probably be moving that plan over to an aggregation program as soon as I could, because this is the ultimate way to go. It's the easiest, lowest liability, lowest cost. By the way, it retains all the personality of your existing plan because the eligibility requirements, the matching scheme that you're using, and any profit sharing you're doing, all those kind of elements, you keep those design elements you keep in this plan as well. So your plan keeps its personality despite moving to this different place. So thank you. Again, this is John O'Reilly, O'Reilly Wealth Advisors. There's our contact information, roadmap at o'ReillyWA.com. And thanks for being here today. And I will stop the recording here momentarily. And again, have a wonderful day and hope to see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.